Hello and welcome to the Sana Psychological Podcast, your safe space for connection, healing, and growth. Each episode, our experienced clinicians and special guests will share strategies, stories, and resources to support your unique path to well-being. Because at Sana, your mental health matters. We hear it all the time. Just be consistent. Discipline is the key. Stick to the plan. But what if what we're calling consistency is actually becoming rigidity? Today, we are talking all about the difference between healthy consistency and unhealthy rigidity, and why so many people get trapped in these negative feedback loops that keep them doing the very things that don't serve them. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Paige Abbott, and I'm excited to talk about this topic with you today. Let's dive right into consistency versus rigidity. I talk about this in session and with clients all the time. We have to remember that consistency is still flexible. It's values and need driven. So it's really attending to where you're at, what you need at any given time. And a key part of consistency is that it actually adapts when life and needs change. Consistency can sound like I return to what matters, kind of even when things get messy. We're adapting our actual activities to meet that general need, but maybe in a different way than we normally would. So for instance, maybe we really do feel the need to move some energy, move our bodies, but we're really tired. So maybe one day we do some gentle stretching in our living room versus going out and doing that intense workout class. Rigidity, on the other hand, is often fear-driven. It says to us that this is the only way to do it. It leaves no room for fatigue. It makes no room for mistakes or adapting to the context of life that we're in. Rigidity can be tied to perfectionism and this idea that if I haven't done it perfectly, if I haven't done it exactly as I've done it before, that somehow I've failed. And that difference between consistency and rigidity, what it sounds like and what it looks like, matters. Because rigidity often looks productive on the outside, but quietly, it's actually eroding our health on the inside. And when I see people walk into the therapy space, this can be what's happening. They really feel that they have these healthy routines, but over time, they've become so rigid that they haven't had that flexibility for the routine to adapt to where are they actually at today. I know even for myself that over the years, my self-care priorities have shifted. Movement has always been a really important one for me. I'm one of these people who's got a lot of energy inside, and I feel that as the day progresses, where I'm sitting, I'm talking, I'm on a computer, I'm recording a podcast, that energy builds up, and I really enjoy moving that energy throughout my evening. But over the years, that's really shifted. It used to be cardio. Then it was a lot of walking. Then it was a lot of yoga. And then it moved into kind of gym strength training. And now it's a nice combination of all of them with, some fun things mixed in there. Maybe just spontaneous movement, dancing, stretching, really trying to listen to what is needed rather than what's always been. And this is often how people can get stuck in what we would call a negative feedback loop. So it is interesting how our brains can get into negative versus positive feedback loops. So a positive feedback loop, we've all experienced it. It's when we finally get over that hurdle of inertia and do the thing we've been wanting to do. And then how we notice that domino effect, how it leads to more helpful, beneficial, productive things. If we can get up off the couch, get off of our phone, go start maybe by taking out the trash, how that then leads us to have that motivation and that ability, well, maybe now that I'm up and doing this, I'll do those dishes that are sitting in the sink, or I'll go put away those letters or bills or whatever is sitting on the counter that I need to get rid of. And so we can see how this positive feedback loop occurs. However, we also can get stuck in a more negative feedback loop. So that's when people get stuck doing unhealthy things over and over again. And so if we are feeling low motivation, we're feeling quite anchored to just sitting, laying down on the couch, we're having a really hard time getting out of that, getting moving, getting motivated. That's being stuck on that couch might lead us to pick up our phone. Maybe now we're scrolling and getting stuck in social media, doom scrolling more than we would like, and how that can then lead to, I don't feel motivated to make a meal for myself, so I choose something quick, easy, maybe not too nutritious. I choose a beverage that's also not very nutritious, and how that feedback loop also can become very routine. We know that we would like to be doing something different. We know that this is not the healthy place for us to be, and yet it's really hard to break out of that. Usually, the negative feedback loop starts at a place of discomfort. We might be feeling stress, you might be feeling fatigue, boredom, overwhelm. We may be feeling a desire for some escape, and that's what the brain is looking for. It wants relief now. So it reaches for what may be maybe familiar, but also fast and soothing, even if that other part of us knows, this probably isn't going to lead me to where I ultimately want to be. But I want just that immediate sense of escape. I want these feelings, the discomfort, to be released from me now. And this can set up consistency just in a way that we don't really want to be in. So it can become this rigid routine of doing things that don't nourish us and aren't nutritive over and over and over again. So we may get into avoidance, overworking, numbing, controlling. And that adds more discomfort long term, even though it was initially designed to suppress or reduce that feeling of discomfort initially. And that's where a lot of our problems occur as humans. Inherent coping mechanisms. We were trying to do something to support ourselves, and over time, it starts to turn in a different direction and become not so supportive for us. So rigidity keeps this negative feedback loop alive and can actually make it more difficult to move to that positive feedback loop where we can access that place of healthy consistency. Rigidity can come because we're feeling a lot of judgment within ourselves. So instead of curiosity, we might be self-attacking ourselves. We might be looking at this through a lens of failure. Why am I like this? I should be better by now. I failed again. And that self-criticism certainly does not motivate change. It doesn't help us move into consistency on that positive feedback loop. It just activates our inherent sense of almost fight or flight. It feels like a threat. So we want to, again, now escape from that feeling. And that keeps us stuck in this rigid negative feedback loop where our brain is choosing quick relief, quick escape, rather than long-term health. I know for myself, when I have felt this come up, it really can be challenging to move through that inertia. My brain can get so easily patterned that I've noticed if I do something on one day, the next day, especially if it's something not the healthiest for me, I noticed it for the first time with drinking soda or pop, that one day I would have pop at a certain time in the day, and then I started to notice that even the next day, around that same time, guess what? I started to crave that pop again. And there were times in my life where I got stuck in that loop where day one became day two, became day three, and so on and so forth. And at a certain point, after this had been going on for months of daily consumption, and of course, during that time, consumption increases more than just that one drink at that one time of day, that eventually something thankfully was able to click or shift inside of me that said, okay, enough is enough. We want to move out of this. But I know how hard that shift from the rigid into the change is. So I feel that, I hear you, I totally understand. And I know that it's a challenging thing to do. And that's why we'll talk about some tips for how to support yourself in moving from that locked in rigidity where you're stuck, you feel trapped, to moving into healthy consistency. Healthy consistency is not about doing the exact same thing every day or in the same way. It's about returning to your values, returning to your true needs, adjusting based on your capacity, and responding instead of reacting. So consistency, if it had a mantra, would sound more like, even if today looks different, I am still aligned with me. Rigidity has a different mantra. It would sound more like, you are going to do this at all costs. It doesn't have empathy. It doesn't have care. It doesn't adjust to the circumstances. It just is. So how do we make that shift from rigidity, being stuck in that negative feedback loop, into consistency? Again, I know it's not easy. None of the stuff that we're going to talk about is easy. The concepts may feel simple or clear, which is great, but the action part is definitely where those internal challenges come up. So first off, I want you to be in acceptance and acknowledgement of those feelings, of those barriers, of that struggle. So tip number one is actually emotional acceptance and acknowledgement. Meet yourself where you're at. That acknowledge, be kind, be empathetic with yourself, that this feels hard, this feels difficult. Acknowledge resistance when it's coming up. There's a part of me that doesn't actually want to make that change. There's a part of me that doesn't want to drink less pop. I want that pop tomorrow at that same time, of course. Our brains are programmed, they're computers. They want to do the same things over and over, and the higher the reward, the more they want to do them. But acknowledging to ourselves the challenges, the feelings that come up during that transition piece is so important, because much like any healthy coach, parent, mentor, we get a lot further by encouragement, validation, and reinforcement than we do by judgment, shame, and criticism. Another tip to shift from rigidity into consistency is to track patterns, not looking for perfection. So instead of asking yourself, where am I failing? How did I mess up? What should change? What has to change? Let's look again at the patterns. So what are you seeing here? How is that feeling for you? What would you like to see change? Patterns unearth our values and where we would like to go. And having that general sense of direction definitely helps us move from the rigid and the negative feedback loops to start to take action to bridging the gap into that positive feedback loop and into healthy consistency. The other tip, build in flexibility. So plan, have in mind that you're going to have lower energy days. You're going to have interruptions to your flow. If you're starting with this general idea of, again, I need movement, or I would like to nourish my body in a helpful way, I want to have a mindset of kindness towards myself. When we hit some roadblocks or speed bumps, now we're not totally thrown off by them, going, oh my gosh, I can't do that thing in the exact same way that I have been or had planned to. Instead, we can say, okay, I'm going to come back to the general need, the general value. How can I still meet that with adjustment and with flexibility? Another thing to keep in mind is shifting the goal from the avoidance of discomfort to the goal of increasing health or capacity. So growth isn't about what we want to get rid of, it's about what we want to grow. So focusing on the direction that we want to go, what we're already gaining, what's momentum that's building along the way is part of that reinforcement piece. And that's always going to be more heartening, lighter, and build more momentum for us than when we're focused on what's missing, what's not happening, or what we want to get rid of. I also really want you to use compassion along the way. So compassion interrupts that part of the rigid cycle where shame rests. Shame is the ultimate fuel of rigidity and those negative feedback loops. So when you're finding yourself regressing or shifting back into patterns that you're not exactly pleased with or don't want to, try saying to yourself, can I learn from this? Something made this harder today. What was it? Also checking in with yourself. What support do I need right now? How can I look after myself rather than beating up on ourselves? These questions invite movement and a forward focus rather than shutting down and getting back trapped in rigidity and that negative feedback loop. If you've been hard on yourself for not being consistent enough, I'm here to remind you it might not be a discipline problem. It might not be a willpower problem. It may be a mindset problem and a rigidity problem. Consistency doesn't mean never falling off, never getting back into old habits or patterns. It means knowing how to come back from that without punishment, without self-blame, and without self-judgment. We can still hold ourselves accountable, but we can do that with compassion and with kindness. Moving in this direction, using these tools, using this mindset is how change that is long-lasting actually occurs. And I wish you all the best in this process. You can come back to this episode anytime. You may want to save it and really revisit it during periods where maybe new goals are coming up, you're developing some shifting in your consistent routines, or when you're feeling caught back in those rigid cycles. I want you to remember change is always possible, and long-lasting change comes from compassionate consistency. Thank you for listening to the Sana Psychological Podcast. We're glad you joined us today. For more resources, free tools, or to book a session with our team, visit sanapsychological.com. Your mental health is our priority. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and take good care.